Hi there and welcome back to another episode of my Beginner Gardener series. Today's part 2 of vegetable plants that are perfect for beginners. If you missed the first part of this, you'll want to check that out and I'll link it in the description below. But otherwise, let's get into today's episode. So the 5 plants that we're going to talk about in today's video are beans, zucchini, nasturtium, basil, and cilantro. So 2 of them are vegetables, 1 is an edible flower, and 2 of them are herbs. And these are all super easy for you to grow if you're new to gardening, and I'm going to show you how. So the first plant I'm going to take you through is beans. I haven't planted any yet. So there are 2 different type of beans that you can grow. You can grow bush beans or pole beans. And so I like to grow bush bean varieties because I don't really have a lot of trellising options in my garden. And so bush beans are really good because they don't take up a lot of space, but they produce a ton of fruit on them. And so I have some Cherokee wax beans here that I haven't planted yet, and so I'm going to plant them with you. And so the reason that beans are really easy to grow is because, for one, they have quite a large seed size. So they're easy if you have kids that you want to grow with, or just if you have a hard time grabbing onto seeds. And so these are really easy. And because you don't have to start them inside, it's another great thing. You don't need to have space in your house. I have my garden here, and so all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plant the bean about twice the depth of the size of the seed. And so literally I'm just gonna push it in and that's it. Now I'm gonna water it and wait for it to germinate. So beans don't like frost, so you do want to make sure that you wait until after your last frost date in order to plant them. And they don't have a lot of pests with them, except for slugs will eat the leaves if you have a damp area. And last year was the first time that I had Japanese beetles that were eating the leaves of my bean plants, but they didn't damage the fruit, they were just eating the leaves. So they're pretty easy to manage. Beans produce a lot, so don't overplant. If you only eat a few beans, you'd really only need about 6 plants or less if you're a family of 2. They produce a ton, and we pickle our beans and we're able to get enough jars to last us the whole year until next season. So you don't want to plant too many unless you absolutely love beans. They enjoy full sun, so you do want to make sure that you're planting your beans somewhere that gets proper full sun and not too much shade in order to give you the most amount of fruit. So next up on the list is zucchini. This is another plant where the seeds are large, so if you have trouble grabbing seeds or you're growing with kids, this one's another simple one. So one thing that I love about zucchini is that it grows really fast. So it is a large plant. You do want to make sure you've got space for it, but it's totally worth it in your garden. They produce a ton of fruit, so you can be drowning in zucchinis, which is a big garden joke out there, but they are really great for giving you a lot of food for the space that they do take up. So zucchini does like full sun, so you want to make sure wherever you plant it gets full sun. The biggest pest that zucchini has is the squash vine borer, and so this is a daytime flying moth that is black and orange. And so what it does is it lays its eggs on the base of the plant, and then the larvae eat the inside of the stem until they're large enough to come out of it. And so the issue with that is they eat everything inside of the stem, which is going to kill your plant. So you'll go to bed with your plant looking happy and healthy, and you'll wake up in the morning and it'll just be dead. And that's because of the larva that's inside of it. So one of the best ways that you can protect your plant from this is by just planting a second round of squash. That'll go out a few weeks after your first one, so that way you have a second crop that's coming through in case your first one does get hit with the squash vine borer. Cucumber beetles also really like the yellow flowers of the squash, but they don't really cause a lot of damage compared to what they do to cucumbers. Otherwise, that one pest, zucchini are super simple to grow, and you're pretty well guaranteed to get zucchini out of it. So I highly recommend growing it if this is your first garden. So next up is nasturtium. This is a beautiful flower that is also edible. The stem, flower, and the leaves are all edible. So these are considered a trap crop. So they are supposed to distract pests from your other plants, and draw them into the nasturtium, although I don't ever find that it actually happens, but I like to grow them because they're really beautiful and they overflow over the edges of your garden, so they just have a really nice aesthetic. And then I like to eat the leaves as kale chips, but nasturtium chips. And you can find that recipe on my website if you're interested. And so the reason that I like nasturtiums as a beginner plant is, again, they have quite a large seed. So if you have a hard time grasping seeds or you're with kids, they're really easy to plant. You don't need to start these indoors. They grow really quickly. So you just have to come outside and pop them into the garden the way that I showed you with the beans. And I just like to plant mine along the edges of the garden. So that way, when they do start getting larger, they will come out and overflow instead of taking over the garden. The actual garden beds, they'll overflow out of it and they'll happily produce that way. And so that's my favorite way to plant these edible flowers. Next up is basil. So this is an herb, and what I love about growing basil is it's also really simple. It's a heat-loving plant, so you do want to make sure that you wait until the last frost date before you plant it out because it does prefer full sun and nice heat. And so basil is really low maintenance, and you can just seed it all into one pot and then separate them out later. I have an example here where you can see I probably got 20 basil plants in here, and I've left them in here forever, which I really should have split them out, and they haven't died yet. So if you forget about them, they aren't going to die on you right away. You have time to up pot them. And so a couple basil plants is really all you need, as long as you know to pinch the top of them, because if you pinch the top of the stem, they'll branch out, and then when those branches come, you pinch those ones as well, and you're gonna get a ton of basil. They don't really have any pests. Herbs are really good for not having pests. They actually do a good job of deterring them from other plants, and so you really don't have to worry about anything with basil except for if they get any type of fungal disease, which you'll notice with black spots on top of them. And if you do get that, you'll just want to rip those plants out, but otherwise they're a really low maintenance plant. And now I want to talk to you about cilantro. Not everybody loves it. This is another really easy plant to grow. And this is also a plant that likes cool temperatures. And so really, you can plant this anytime in the early spring at the same time as your dill, where it's still 0 degrees and the seeds will still grow. That's totally fine. So you can just take your seeds and toss them into your garden the same way you do with the dill, and they will grow. Similar to if you see when your plant goes to seed, it flowers and goes to seed, they'll just throw all of the seeds off of the plant and you'll see them growing early in the spring again because they like that cool temperature. They do like to have some sunshine, but when the heat gets too high, they will go to flower. And so it's best to capitalize on this earlier in the springtime or again in the fall. Your other option is you can take a handful of seeds and some dirt and mix them together and then just throw them into the garden together. So those are a couple options that you have for planting your cilantro. Otherwise, again, these are really simple to grow and enjoy. And that's everything for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. We have more episodes coming out for this beginner gardener series, so I look forward to seeing you in the next video.